Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
Simple questions for 100 people. Welcome to the experiment. I'm Bill Correll, and this is my investigation. I'm researching to gather data from 100 beautiful human beings for the sole purpose to see what actually happens across the interviews. The questions are all fixed, and the interviews will remain consistent, with a variable being the actual participants themselves and their answers. So, Wendie, it's as if I'm having you come sit on my porch to share your thoughts so I can learn about people. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we're going to get to know our guest here really well. And I would like to ask you, what is your full name?
Wow, you start with the hard questions. My full name is technically Lydia Wendie Veloz.
You say that as if there aren't a lot of people that know about the Lydia part.
There aren't a lot of people. I might have to have you edit it out. Just kidding. Either. No, I've gone by Wendy my whole life. So yeah,
So
most people don't know.
You're a past GI, and at that point you're in DC. So sometimes you have to kill people after you give them information, right?
I do have an alter ego. Her name is Lydia.
That we'll have some fun here getting to know all sides of you. So,
Great.
Anything more than that? You know, like a confirmation name or anything of that nature?
No, that's it. That's my only name.
I think it's perfect, and it does describe you to a T. I could see you being one of the world's best Lydias, and there's a neat thing about how you spell your name. Can you tell me a little story about that? It's not the traditional Wendy.
No, it's not. So it actually goes back to the Lydia part. Lydia was my grandmother's name. She spelt it with an I, Lidia, which is the Mexican way to spell Lydia. My mother thought she was having a boy. So I was meant to be named Philip or Noel, depending on when I was born. If I was born on Christmas, Noel. If I was born some other time in December, Philip. So lo and behold, I came 2 weeks early, December 8th. And that was how I became not Philip. And I was girl. And it wasn't Noel because I wasn't born on the Christmas holiday. So yeah, after a while, I guess my mom realized she wasn't having a boy and couldn't use either the name she planned, and had to scramble. So she named me after my grandmother, and then let my sister name me. And so she named me Wendy after a classmate she had who had developmental disability. And so she was friends with this young woman, and said, I'm going to name her Wendy. And then my mom said, well, I don't want to get her confused with my mom. And so she just started calling me Wendy, and there goes that.
Good for you. So that's something we have in common. Both of our parents thought we were going to be the opposite sex of what we actually showed up as. I was going to be Linda.
You were going to be Linda.
Linda. That was one of the big names back in 1954.
Well, so that's interesting. I mean, I think Lydia is an older name too, which is partially why I'm kind of glad I don't go by it.
I think you're a much better Lydia Wendy than you might be as Philip Noel. So
yeah. I'm fully not a Philip Noel.
I get that. So, Wendy, what is your favorite nickname that most people don't know about?
My grandfather used to call me Where the Wind Blows because I like to travel a lot, and I'm not like, it's impossible to keep me still. So it was just his way of like, oh, you're around where the wind blows, like you're back. And then, he'd ask me where I'd been or what I'd been doing. And yeah, it was always kind of fun. But Wendy, fun fact, is actually rooted in the name Wanda, and the root name Wanda means to wander. So it all makes sense. Oh, and someone's calling me. Yep. Yeah. So it all makes sense. It's all good.
That's the beauty of these live performances and where we are in our workspace as well. Sometimes
Yeah.
the world doesn't realize that we're busy talking to, a
Even when
few
you have do not disturb on, they still disturb.
about that.
I don't know
You
how they do it.
do you have an iPhone?
I do, and they let a lot of people disturb.
It seems like every time there's an update, there's about 19 things that I don't know that I have to either reset or learn how to reset, you know?
Now I just turn it to, like, full volume off, no vibrate, like, want 0 alert and do not disturb at the same time.
Yeah, I had a friend that used to put it into airplane mode and then shut the phone off.
Oh, that's a good one. I should try that next time. Yeah, that's the good
If
way. Just get rid of everybody.
you're into that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
So, Wendy, when did you first notice what color hair you had?
Um, um, I don't think I really noticed my hair in general until I decided to chop it off as a child. And so I got very aggravated. I have very thick Mexican hair, so I got very aggravated one day and realized that there were these blonde little girls who could very easily put their hair in a ponytail, but my hair would not do that, and it was very difficult. It was very heavy, it was really long, and so I would be, like, struggling with it. I would break the ponytail. It was just like a mess. And so eventually I got really frustrated one day when I was trying to make my own ponytail. My mom wasn't there, and I grabbed this top piece of hair and I chopped it all the way to the scalp. Like, I scalped myself. I
Yikes.
didn't realize what I was doing, and my mom, in her genius, yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about my mom. She just decided to, let me ride and grow it out. And so I had to deal with this little piece of hair at the top of my head that eventually had to grow its way out to the rest of it. And now we're good. We're good. It's back.
It's all caught up now, huh?
Yeah, but that
That's
was the first time I, like, knew the difference between hair textures, hairstyles, hair colors, like, and realized that mine was different from other people's.
about how old do you think you were?
6. I mean, old enough that I shouldn't have been playing with scissors.
You should
Young enough that I knew the difference.
at least you knew not to run with them, right?
Yeah, yeah, I was sitting and
Well,
cutting.
that's interesting. And, everybody else in your family have the same kind of thick Mexican hair?
No, that's actually what spurred me wanting to do our DNA tests is that we have very different hair. My hair, no one has this. I don't know where it came from. Like what it even my dad, neither my dad nor my mom, who are my real dad and mom, do not have this. They're definitely my mom and dad. But they both have wavy or curly hair. And like very my mom has very curly hair. My sister has very wavy hair. And my other sisters have some version of wavy hair. So I'm the only one who has this very straight, thick hair. Which for a long time I was really sad. I used to actually beg my mom to perm my hair, and she was like, "It would ruin it. Why would you do that?" I'm eternally grateful. But again, mom is really good.
And was that because, all your friends were doing it kinda thing, or
Oh,
you just
yeah, in
wanted
the '80s,
different?
perms were big. Yeah, and little kids, and I mean, we're even perming their hair. Like, everybody had a perm.
That's so, what's your favorite thing to do to intentionally waste time?
Lay in a hammock. If I have time to waste, I will lay in a hammock, and I'll bring a book. I mean, it's not like all quote unquote wasting, but I'm gonna look at the scenery, and I'll just, take my water and hang out in my hammock.
You have one in the backyard sort of thing or on a porch or
No, I have a portable hammock that you can take anywhere, so I take it to the forest. Like, I'll go hike and then set it up like the end of a trail on the lake and just kinda like or I'll go camping and set it up camping. So,
yeah.
yeah.
They call that forest bathing. Are you familiar with that term?
Yeah, that would make sense, I guess, but,
Yeah.
no, I never heard it.
I think it's somewhat I hang out with a lot of people that are very much into mindfulness and, more or less becoming part of your surroundings. And I guess there's a Japanese philosophy that to find your soul, what you have to do is go be among all the other souls and start to recognize who they are. And the best place to do that is in the forest
Hmm,
where there's not only plant life and trees and flowers and all that sort of thing, but myriad insects, birds, little animals, you name it. And all of that is, like it can be an extremely amazing experience, but most people report that they find it very rejuvenating, as I think you're conveying to us in your method of wasting time. It's about finding yourself for a moment and just having a good time, huh?
Yeah, just relaxing, no pressure. The other thing it's nice, like fun fact about forest is that there's shade. So if it's in the middle of the summer, you're not just like baking in the sun. And that makes a big difference to your enjoyment. So, you know, just finding good spots is really what it's about for me. And that might be, sometimes a little sunny, sometimes a little shady. If I can get a breeze, all good.
Interesting. Good. So you're not a Microsoft Solitaire or Candy Crush kind of gal.
No, I only begrudgingly go on social media because I have a business and I need to. I very much am an outdoorsy nature, like stick me out in the forest and I'll find my way home sort of girl.
That's interesting. And that's also something nice to know about you too. I will salt that away for future reference. Um, and it's also kind of so where you are now, how difficult or easy is it for you to go and find a place of solitude like that?
Oh, my house, the end of the block backs up to the forest. So Maryland's really good about having preserved a lot of forest areas and then like neighborhoods and then the kind of suburb sort of area. So I have a state park about 8 minutes from my house that like I go and set up shop on the on the side of the little lake that they've got there. It's a man-made lake, but it's cute. And you can take your canoes and I have a paddle board. So sometimes I'll take my paddle board out. So, I love this area. I moved back to this area from Texas because Texas didn't have enough nature. But here, I mean, I can get to nature and spend hours in nature, like probably in 10 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, and the nature that Texas does have is not really friendly to people all that much sometimes.
No, I don't like snakes and I don't like heat. So
Scorpions,
yeah.
spiders, all sorts, all manner of things that maybe some other types of people would like, but I don't think you don't fall into the goth category as far as
And
I
I'm not
can
a
see
prickly plant kind of person. It's not my jam. No.
for you. Good for you. So, Wendy, what's your favorite movie to watch alone?
Hmm. That's a good question because I'm actually funny fact about me. I grew up in LA, so I didn't have I have a short fuse for movies and all the Hollywoodness of it because of like every day, your news is about Hollywood. So I don't tend to pay attention to movies or like movies very much. One of these people who's like, eh. But I will say, I like to watch anything that's a comedy and anything that's like an Adam Sandler movie. So I'll watch some of the classic Adam Sandler movies, like if I can get like a Happy Gilmore or like something just, good fun that you can like laugh at and not pay attention to or listen to in the background. But yeah, I'd say anything Adam Sandler is a good pick for me.
Like it, I really do. I win.
Exactly. And also I love, if I can, like, see any kind of progression in people's, like, creation, and you've been able to see Adam Sandler over years just doing so many interesting kinds of roles, so I always think appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. Watching someone grow in the medium is really very, very cool, especially if it's somebody you know personally, you
I
know?
don't know him, though, unfortunately.
Would you like to meet him? We might be able to get that to happen. He's
Yeah,
a
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
down to earth guy from what I understand.
Yeah, yeah, let's have lunch.
Okay, see if we can get that going for you. If you were to have an action figure made of you, what superpower would it have, and what would the colors of its uniform be?
Hmm. That's interesting because I don't really have a favorite superpower for myself. People ask you this question a lot in icebreakers, and I'm always struggling to like, what would I do? Um, I suppose I would teleport. I think that would be my good superpower. I would be able to teleport, and then I'd be able to help people wherever I could teleport to. So I would still have to have some sort of like helper outfit so people knew I wasn't just some random traveler, time traveler showing up in places. So I don't know. I don't want to have like a red cross on me because that also could be weird. But like, I need to have some like I'm here to help outfit,
Yeah, that's funny.
like
That's funny.
a shirt that just says like I come in peace. I don't know.
It brings to mind that Facebook meme that says, "If I bring you breakfast in bed, just say thank you. Don't ask me how I got into your house," you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, don't ask me too many questions. I teleported into your world, and I'm like offering you suggestions on how you can help. Um, Yeah. Just don't ask.
So, I'm wondering, because you mentioned, you would teleport to help people. Would you say helping people is your superpower?
Yeah, 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 definitely. We're helping people help people, I guess it's sort of meta at this point, because I'm more of a coach for people who help people. So, yeah.
Yeah, making a difference is a really important way to get out of bed in the morning, right? Something
Yep.
to look forward to every day.
Yeah, it's not exactly teleporting, but it's interesting to be able to go to different places if to do that kind of work by the people that you work with, right? So, they do the work in those other places, but I get to help and serve from here.
Excellent. So along the lines of teleporting, you were raised in LA. You've also been to Texas. You're now on the East Coast near Washington, D.C. Where else in the country have you been?
New Orleans, I've spent a time there. I lived in bit I went to, Columbia, New York, so I spent a bit of time there. Um, Been here a bunch, keep moving back here. And then, I've been to Uganda. I lived in Uganda for a little bit in a village, and then, I lived in Tanzania for a little bit in Dar es Salaam, but worked in different places. So, yeah, I've been a few places.
You. It sounds like you're
Been around the
you're
block, yeah.
yeah, you're halfway there in empowering your superpower.
I have yeah, I've definitely used this superpower all over the world. I could say it that way.
Kind of neat. So, what did you want to grow up to be when you were 5 years old?
That's an interesting question because I don't think I had, like, many career options in terms of exposure as a kid. I didn't you know, my mom was an office worker, so I assumed that I would work in some sort of, like, nondescript office. There was no, like, aspiration to go to college, there wasn't an expectation to go to college. I went to college by accident as the first one in my family to go to college and go to grad school, so, the idea of being a doctor, lawyer, or whatever wasn't, like, as a five-year-old attainable, I guess, or even, in your cognition. So, yeah, I assumed I was gonna, like, file papers in an office. I assumed there would be papers to file also. Clearly, there's not.
So, at the end of the day, given that aspiration for when you've grown up, and now you have, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's weird because I never thought one, I guess at a certain point, I didn't think I'd go to college, and at a certain point, I didn't think I'd go to grad school, and then at a certain point, I didn't think I'd have a professional career, and then at one point, I never knew how to build a business, didn't think I'd be an entrepreneur, and then now I'm an entrepreneur, so I guess the point is you keep evolving, right? Like, it's this journey that you're on, that you're going forward, and if you are able to, you can attain whatever.
Agreed, and you have always struck me as somebody who's up to something in the world?
I try to keep up to something all the time.
I think it's up to something good in my experience. I think, what you've decided to do and how you've decided, to feed the cat, it's a really appropriate way for somebody with your vision of what the world is and can be, kind of expressing that and building it yourself. That's
Yep,
just me talking.
I
Um,
appreciate
you're
it.
very, very welcome. What's your greatest accomplishment?
Yeah, that's so hard. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the thing that would represent all encapsulate all of what I've done or encapsulate all the things is I actually have a tree planted in my name in a very far part of Tanzania that's very difficult to get to in a very rural community that I just had to go and be the US government official who opened the clinic. But I think that it's a big accomplishment, not because the tree is in my name or because it's super far, but really because that there's people who know that there's others who care about them that are super far away, that you can't see, that you can't touch, that you wouldn't ever think, "Oh, these people in America care about us enough to sponsor and open healthcare clinics for us in this very rural part of another country in a very middle of Africa." And I think that for me, that encapsulates a lot of what I've done. Just how can we touch people that we can't even actually physically reach? And how can we make sure that whatever we're doing, we're exponentially growing our impact to, new places, new spaces, new folks who can always receive and also give back to us as well. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Wonderfully said. So is there actually like a little plaque or something on the tree that has
Yeah,
your
yeah. I have pictures of me and the mayor, like, scooping the dirt into the hole together. The funny thing was I didn't know how to plant a tree. I mean, I'm from LA, like, we don't plant trees. I never did a, like, green space project, so he had to, like, show me how to cut the plastic off the little tree and dig more of the hole and put it in, so there's this whole sequence of pictures, and then I have, like, this little plaque there. But I haven't been there in about gosh, now it'll be close to 11 years, so I'm sure the tree is quite big, if it's still
depending on
alive.
what kind of tree it is and in that part of it's in Africa, right?
Yeah.
Tanzania. It probably, well, has grown like a weed and then some.
Yeah, so that's one of my goals in life is to go back and find this tree and see if it actually, like, it became a tree and it did well and whatnot. See what happened.
So, what I like about that is that, your name's not in up in lights per se, and there's also this image of you, which can be very iconic for people who have no idea who you are. But you'd have to be somebody great to have come all the way from the United States to come to that place and be, kind of like the sponsor of the US government for starting a clinic.
Yeah, yeah, I assumed they thought I was better than I was because when I went on this same trip, or like a earlier trip, I was talking to another government official, and she said, "Oh, President Obama sent you all the way over here to ask me to do this. I must do whatever you say." And I'm like, "Wow, people really think that, like, I truly am the representative for all of the American people, including at the time the president."
Well, you must be like, godmother to, Sasha and Malia, or, there's no
Yeah,
question
yeah,
about
we had a direct line of communication, and he said, "Go get these things
dinner
done in
with them on
Africa."
Sundays. Yeah, all that good stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we go way back.
What I think is really great about that is that, it's probably in a place where people of all ages, especially, I'm gonna say little girls. I have 2 daughters that I've always really challenged to look up to icons in sports and other places in the world, and I think to have just this image of I'm kinda taken by this. I think it's a great idea. I would recommend it that from now on, when somebody goes and builds something new, even if it's just a small little thing like a temporary housing or something of that nature, plant a tree and name the tree, and let people know that there were human beings that cared enough to do this for you. It didn't just
Mhm.
happen on its own.
Yeah, yeah, and the funny thing was it was so difficult to get those plaques to put on all those clinics because the clinics themselves were already kind of a stretch of, American government putting, doing all these amazing things, but spending a good amount of money on this project, right? And so going to be able to say, "Hey, the American public sponsored this," was actually a very big deal. It was very important to do so that
Yep.
people didn't then take credit for the clinics they hadn't paid for them.
All
So,
right, we got
yeah.
we got you the tree and the seed money, $500,000. Now you gotta go do the rest.
Yeah, yeah, so we gave you these resources, please take care of them.
Yeah, and they, and to many, the credit of many that they have,
Mhm.
but more often than not, it's the folks who came in that were volunteers and missionaries and all that sort of thing, and people who came out of the community who made it work and made it last.
Yeah, I mean, those kinds of things require extreme partnership, right? And I think you know more than a lot of people what that means to partner with NGOs and nonprofits and public-private partnerships and bringing business into it or government. It's a lot of layers, and so for it to materialize into actual services that help the public is really amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna interpret that as there are many communications opportunities for egos and different things to sort of get in the way, and for the puzzle pieces not to fit each other all that well, and to tell people sit down and say, "Hey, how do we make this work?"
Yeah, and then to struggle through to get it done. So
Anything worth doing is worth, having to put your shoulder into, right?
yeah, and then all the way down to me who was there just to open it. I didn't build it. I didn't negotiate those contracts, but I was the person who showed up in the dress to say hi. So,
I would
it's
say I'm
really
pleased
funny.
that it was you. I'm pleased that it was you. I think you were a fabulous emissary to any place that you represent a group of people.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. So, um, who is your favorite person to listen to?
Probably my mom. We did talk about my mom. I mean, there's lots of people that I could listen to, podcasts or leaders who have speeches you could listen to. But I think I didn't listen to my mom enough. Like when I was growing up, like you hear your people chattering at you of like why you shouldn't do things or why you should do certain things. But my mom always had really sound like advice and reasons for things, and I would sometimes tune them out. But now as an adult, I mean, you pick up the phone and call her like, "Oh, I need this, whatever sorted out." And so I think yeah, my favorite person to listen to sort things out is definitely my mom.
Yeah, good for you. So, if you don't mind, that's a good 30,000-foot view. What's the best advice she's ever given you?
Ah, that's interesting. I think I had a relationship that didn't work out, and she said, "Well, that conflict would have come up either way. It would have come up now or it would have come up later. But either way, you had this and he had that, and those things would have bubbled to the surface. So no matter what you thought or what you were having fun doing, those things were always below the surface. So until you work through them or don't, they're going to be there." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
That sounds very wise. It sounds like somebody who's had a trip or 2 around the sun, and, it's also a good way to take away the blame and the guilt of the situation because when things don't work out, you're always trying to figure out what could have gone differently, which is
Oh
kind of
yeah.
a waste. It turns out to be not that useful. The really good part of having a mom like that can come in and say, "Hey, better to have it blow up now than later on."
Yeah, and I think the reflection also was both parties are probably at fault. Like
Oh,
both
yeah,
people have their own baggage that you're coming with, and if you can't communicate and you choose not to communicate, that's one strategy, but if you choose to communicate, you've gotta address the baggage on both sides. You can't just it's no one's here to blame.
exactly, exactly, and that's part of being an adult, isn't it?
I think you learn and you grow. Some people are not really there, right, to be able to do that and
Yeah,
to move in that way. So yeah, you would think that the adult way is one way, but my mom was very much explaining to me, what you're expecting sometimes is just not what's going to happen. So be available to fix your parts of the equation, and maybe somebody else will come and put their equation there, and it'll balance.
exactly. Well, see, that's what everybody's looking for is a yin to fit your yang, you know?
Yeah.
And, and it will happen, it will always happen as long as you're looking for it. And I think the whole idea I'm gonna take away from what your brilliant mother said was, if you're afraid you're gonna blow something up, blow it up now, you know?
Yeah.
Don't blow it up when you got something to lose. Blow it up now when all you have to lose is a future together that turns out to be a heartbreak, you know?
Yeah, it's really about the potential, right? It's the opportunity lost at that point versus the whatever could have perpetuated on as a bigger problem. So
Thank you for sharing all that because I now
yeah.
understand why she's your favorite person to listen to.
She's pretty darn wise about a lot of topics, including business for never having a business. It's kind of funny.
I will say this, I think she's done okay with you. I mean,
Appreciate
I
it.
think a lot of her having never met her, but, I think she's done okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, so this is a perfect time to ask you this question. Please complete this sentence. When I grow up, I'd like to
When I grow up, I'd like to have a yoga retreat. Yeah, in like another country. Maybe a juice bar or something like that. On the beach. And just adding to it.
Tahiti maybe, with Tony
Yeah,
Robbins,
yeah,
or
I've heard Costa Rica got expensive, so gotta find another place.
isn't that how it goes? These, like, really cool places where you're not only safe, things don't cost very much, and the weather is fantastic.
And then everybody finds out about it, and I know it all costs a lot.
Exactly. So tell me a little bit more. Are you, a big yoga enthusiast now?
No, I think it's more just wanting the vibe of a yoga retreat. I don't know if people actually have to do yoga while they're there. I think it's just maybe a yoga vibe retreat. But, it's like yoga
Go
optional.
around with a spray bottle, okay? Go liquid yoga.
Can do yoga here if want, but, uh, Yeah, no, it's for me, I think more it's like the lifestyle of being able to live on the beach, having I enjoy people, so having travelers or other folks come through and being able to connect and network, but not having to leave my beach haven. That sounds positive. Also just the idea of, I like food and entertaining and people enjoying themselves and fun. And so, maybe being the owner of that and then also like a live-in guest, but I don't have to manage it. I just, like, live there, and somebody else solves all the problems. That's that's the vision.
It sounds like you're describing the ultimate way to express your superpower of helping people in a kind of a passive way where it's here available to you. Make of it what you will, but,
It's my
have
retirement helping people.
now, would you like guava or would you like mango, you know?
Yeah, I could arrange it with the people.
I got a guy. Yeah, I
Yeah, and I
love
think
it.
it'd be more about my relaxing and having solitude when I want it, and then having access to what I enjoy, which is people.
Interactions is what keeps us going.
Yep.
So, what is the most important thing in life to you right now, Wendy?
Ooh, definitely time. Time is super important. I don't waste time in places I don't need to. I audit my time regularly. I'm readjusting and time blocking and thinking of new ways to give myself space to relax, give myself space to work, be flexible with my time when I need to, and forgive myself for if I waste time and I just feel like it's not a good use of my time to be able to reframe and recheck in with what are my routines looking like and how can I restructure myself. So yeah, time. I'm working a lot on that, like, for the last maybe 3 years.
So I like everything, all of the little thought models that you brought up right there. We are constantly bombarded, by these thoughts that are they're not necessarily our best thinking, or they're not good for
Mhm.
us. And it sounds to me like what you've decided is that no, that's all right. You'll have those thoughts, but then you're going to have your own ones that are going to actually lead you on to the next thing that you do, and with power.
Yeah, there's gonna be a triumphant thought. There has to be a winning thought because the other thoughts, and especially when I worked for the government or worked for someone else, my thoughts were dictated for me, right? My parameters and my time and other things were dictated for me. So now being an entrepreneur, when you have freedom and you have freedom of thought, you have freedom of choice, you have freedom of management of time, management of self, you can't stay in those negative spaces or in those spaces of unsurety. You have to understand and use and leverage your assets, and your time is your biggest asset. So for me, that really was the reframing of, like, I became an entrepreneur and realized, oh, I wasn't using my time right for 90% of my life.
Well, you didn't know how to swim till you knew how to swim. And that's one of those things that's clearly in everybody's area of you don't know, you don't know. And in the meantime, it's like the folks that I work with, we talk about thought distortions, okay?
Mhm.
And if you're going to have 80,000 thoughts a day, which is like, that's a good number in terms of public speaking, how many thoughts you think, people have, makes them less responsible for every single individual thought. And you can now kind of like put them into categories. And what you've done is to basically say, all right, so now I'm aware. I can have some fun with it, and I can take my life and I can put blocks of do nothing time in there that I know that I'm going to find something really powerful to do.
Mhm. And to know that I'm gonna show up better in the other blocks of time when I'm doing, if there are blocks when I'm not doing. And I think that was an important lesson because I thought early in the business that if I wasn't doing, I wasn't earning money, I wasn't trying hard enough. And then I realized that you can try all you want to make a business go. If it's not strategic about where you're putting your time and what you're doing with it, then it's still never going to work and be profitable. so
Yeah,
so go take a nap.
there's trying, and then there's effectively efforting, and
Mhm.
the effectively efforting, for people who don't know, they don't know, looks an awful lot like breaking a sweat. And a lot of times it's no, don't just do something, stand there.
Yeah. Just show up to the party. See what
And be
happens.
effective when you're
Yep,
overwhelmed, right?
yep,
Never mind all of that. I'm just going to listen and respond appropriately, and what
yep.
have you. Yeah, this such great wisdom at such a young age, as far as I'm concerned. You've hung out with some pretty cool people, haven't you? In addition to your mom.
I have a lot of chats with a lot of cool people. Yes, I have some of the coolest friends in the entire world, including yourself. So I am very gifted in the realm of thinking and chatting. Lots of people to talk to.
Yeah, the notion that there are so-called thought leaders,
Mhm,
um, means that you have to, look for individuals, but if you're gonna be a thought leader, grower, you need to be a thought listener,
mhm.
and, that's much more powerful because all of the power is in the listening. It's what you do with what you hear, as a practitioner and as a listener. If somebody steps up on stage with 500 people in front of them and they aren't worth listening to, they immediately get kind of like ignored.
Yeah, or people start leaving the talk. It just
Or you're the kind of person that their listening is so strong and powerful for you, they'll line up and sit out in the freezing cold overnight to come in and hear you speak for 5 minutes.
yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
cool dynamic. I wish Albert were still alive so I could ask him, "Tell me about the relativity of that?"
Yeah, well, I think it's really me trying to be a thought cultivator because I want people to tell me their thoughts, but I also want us to co create new thoughts, right? To be able to add, to amplify, and to attract the ideas of abundance, the ideas of, progress, the ideas of how do we make things easier for people who have maybe traditionally not had it so easy. So sometimes, you've got to break the barriers of one brain or one voice and be able to come to it from a collective to answer, really complex things. And so a lot of the times I'm working in complex spaces with social impact leaders, and we couldn't come to a solution by ourselves. But if we come together, we have a much better chance.
I really appreciate that because all co-creations have to do with understanding, and
Mhm.
it comes from communication, and it also comes from a partnership. Everybody who says I'm going to go away and think about this by myself, and maybe I'll have a moment of clarity, and well, no, almost 99% of everything that ever makes a difference in the world is in a conversation with another human being
Mhm.
as a result of maybe you stumbling onto a thought you had last week by yourself that never there's no opportunity to act on it. So I love what you're saying. Okay. uh, thought, thought co-creation, thought creation, thought listener, thought, all of that, the whole thinking part of it comes
Yeah.
before action, right?
Yep. I love it. And I tell people sometimes, my job is just to be a thought partner. I mean, yes, you're coaching and trying to elicit solutions, but really I'm just here to help you think. Do some intense thinking you don't have the space to do in your schedule because you're doing all those other 80 million thoughts that you have.
Yeah, yeah, to help kind of examine the sanity of some of the ideas that you're having that just don't sound right to other people.
Yeah,
um
so I created a process called idea surgery for that, which is my visual mind mapping process because it's exactly that. How can I visualize and see what you're dealing with in your world in order to coach you better, to cut through, to, enact solutions in your realm better? If I don't know what you're dealing with as a human, it's difficult for me to then co-create with you. But if as a coach I can understand from the get-go what that looks like for you, then
yeah.
I can be able to be a better thought partner, to be a better thought cultivator, to support you in better ways because I understand from your perspective, your lived experience, which I could never possibly understand unless you open it up to me. And so
Yeah.
that's what I was able to kind of find a little process to do. And it's been fun to see people go through it. Man, people have had such good outcomes.
I love it. And, to be a really good coach, you have to understand all the fundamentals that are in place so that you can look at the small things that make the big difference, the trim tabs that turn the Queen Mary,
Yeah.
the little tiny things on the rudder, that make it possible to turn the Queen Mary in less than a mile. And you always find, you find too that when you're giving people advice, you're giving them their own words so that they can hear them differently.
Yeah. Yes. I do a lot of reframing. Yeah, and I think sometimes people have more wisdom than they're willing like, they know it. They just don't wanna admit it, or they're waiting for someone else to validate for them. And we have a lot of talks about, well, why is that a reason that you shouldn't go forward, or what's preventing you from doing this? And it comes down to not having the validation, not having someone told me specifically I'm good at, I should, I can, they'll support me in. And when you don't have that, sometimes you just don't, you don't, it stops you from making progress. So I think that's when a coach can come in and really help you see things you can't see for yourself.
I do agree with you that it's a very, very important thing in life, and I'm your partner.
Yeah.
So, what would you like to leave in the world after your life is done?
Probably just all my knowledge, like anything I've learned in this lifetime, whether it's through books or the podcast or through, courses and whatever. I just feel like we lose so much knowledge with every generation and every single person who isn't able to articulate the things that they processed and learned through in this life. And so that would kind of be my biggest wish is just there's a way to really carry that forward. And I know that literature and reading has been traditionally our way of doing that as a society, but I think as we change with technology and as we grow with the way that we consume content, some content is fleeting and it just goes away so quickly. So how can we find ways to really transfer knowledge? And I'd love for that to be, part of what I do in this world.
Yeah, I'm kind of letting that soak in for a moment. The transference of knowledge, in my experience, has a lot more to do with experiencing something than it has than just reading it and understanding the
Hmm.
words. It's like when you like going back to swimming, rhythmic breathing, or balance on a bicycle, or when you do your first public speaking and you're not, at some point your stomach says, "No, I'm not going to throw up." Let's get after this thing and connect with these people and knock them alive. I really I appreciate that because passing that knowledge along, that's really the only thing of value that we have at the end of the day, right? That's our dash
Hmm.
in due dates.
Well, it's why we know not to eat certain berries, right? Like why we know certain things are poisonous for us. Like somebody tried that and died. And then they pass that knowledge on, right? So, like, what is our version of that? What I mean, yeah, we had to experience these things, right? So, since we experienced those things, then what is learned from our experience?
Yeah. Any thoughts on how that gets passed along?
I don't know because as like I said, as technology changes, I think it affords us new ways to do that and to new ways to give voice to individual stories. But one of the things I was talking to a client about yesterday, they did a really powerful project called a photo voice project. And it's basically you take a still image of a person and then they get to quote about whatever they want, or it could be around a theme, it could be about, whatever. But it's like a snapshot of a person's perspective at the time. And it's very much a moment in time, a thought from that individual in the picture. And so, I think there's different ways that we could be doing it and even very more artistic ways. But it's gonna take us to like really trying to do this thing, to really try to learn from each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the sound of that, and I'm recalling, back in the 1980s or 1990s, people would write down, what they thought they would accomplish in the next 12 months in a single paragraph, and
Mm.
every single year and they do this for 2 years out, 5 years out, 20 years out. Some went out to 50 years, and then on the anniversary of those dates, they would open them up, and they'd talk about the person that wrote the paragraph.
Oh, mhm.
It sounds kind of similar, you
Yeah.
know, rather than being visual, it's like, what could you have been thinking at the time? And I guess after, 30 or 50 years or whatever it is, I don't know if I could put myself in the same frame of mind that I might have been, when I was 20 years old.
Yeah, I don't know where I would I think I knew better then where I thought I'd be in 50 years
Yeah.
than, going backwards and saying, "What was I thinking about?"
Got that one wrong.
Yeah, yeah, no, I didn't do the things I thought I was gonna do at all. It's totally different life.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the life you've got right now, you wouldn't trade, you know?
No, no, it's been great. I love this life.
So knowledge is that's worth a lot. It really is. So
Yeah,
we've come to the end of our 12 regular questions. And I
okay.
don't know if you have a decent baker down there in Maryland, but I've got a really good Italian baker over here. Mata is the bakery. And the neat thing about it is I was only going to use 12 questions because that's the guy that I stole it from, James Lipton. That's what he asked all of the actors who came through his studio. But I've decided that I'd get an extra question in here because I always get
Nice.
12 rolls or 12 cupcakes, and then I get a 13th one free. So here's your baker's question. What is
Okay.
the thing that most people misunderstand about you?
Oh, I would say I talk quick and I just speak my mind. So that often leads to some very interesting conversations where I have to backpedal and explain myself if I didn't articulate correctly the first time what I meant. And then also, if I did articulate, then I want to stand by my saucy comment, I will. But a lot of the times, yeah, that people don't understand that I'm just a very straightforward person. So if something's going to hurt, if something's going to be brutally honest, if something's going to need to be said, I will probably have the voice to say it, and I don't really have I don't have a chip on my shoulder or a problem with it. And I think that sometimes that comes off as I'm a bee or I'm not the nicest person in some scenarios, and I can be the most lovely person in other scenarios. But I'm always going to tell you the truth, and I'm always going to tell you straight. So don't expect anything less than integrity. And I think that that part people realize, and so they go, oh, they give me an excuse on the if it was kind of saucy, because it's all about in the end, like what is my honest perspective? If you're asking me for my honest perspective, I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah. So what I'm taking away from that is that you're in the world being real, being authentic and truthful, and sometimes it doesn't land all that great. But when it does, you appreciate the opportunity for somebody to say, "What?"
Yeah, a reflection, and again, like you said, being in conversation is all part of the human experience. So having to reflect, reframe, be in conversation further is all part of how you grow closer in relation, right? So to me, there's no problem with somebody questioning, my motive is my question, whatever I said, no problem. Let's have the conversation.
Yeah, discernment and distinguishing are really good, great parts of communication. To say "I understand" when you don't, is missing out on the opportunity to really have a piece of gold.
Yeah, yeah, and I think when you ask for clarity and you ask for understanding, you're hoping that someone's coming with integrity and honesty to the conversation, right? So that's the other part of it is I always tell people, and like if I messed up, I'll tell you I messed up. If I didn't and I intended to say what I said, I will also tell you why. 100%, no problem.
That sounds great. So that completes all of our questions. Do you have any questions of me?
What was your favorite thing you learned about me today?
Oh, let me see. There were so many. Um, I think I got a new, fresh perspective on just what a great personality that you have in addition to being a great person.
Oh, thank
And
you.
what I mean by that is, um, people at home, you're not gonna see this, but Wendy has laughing eyes, she has got a beautiful smile, and it really, it opens up when you're feeling open, and then you also are authentically a little bit on the scowling side when you feel like scowling. So, I don't have to interpret, too much, where you're coming from. You're just an authentic, always there, very genuine human being. I would not have known that with you from the brief time that we spent before. It was more businesslike, in my opinion, and this was, exactly what I invited you to do, was to come and sit on my porch and have a conversation with me so that I can learn about people, and I appreciate that about you.
Yeah, thank you. This has been super fun. I think more people need to have podcasts like this. This is great.
Well
Even with the questions, you never know what people are gonna ask, but this is fantastic.
well, I'm so glad that you had a good experience because that's always my goal, and I've never had to apologize to anyone for having them on my show. So
Nice.
so any other things that you'd like to just kinda say to wrap up? Anything more you'd like to
Yeah.
say about yourself
Um,
or the world
yeah.
or
So if anybody wants to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm Wendie Veloz on both platforms. But if they want to hear more social impact stuff, they can go listen to the Social Impact Level Up podcast, where Bill was a recent guest in our season 3, and you can listen to his episode and hear all about him and I chatting on his stuff. But yeah, those are the things to share. Just come find me somewhere.
absolutely awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna leave you with the same invitation that I always do. In your life, there are people that you care about, And I would like for you to, one way or another, through email, text, letter, carrier pigeon, wrap a message around a rock and throw it through their front window, but just let them know that the world works because they're in it. And you'll always be there for them if they need you. And that you should be their last course of action if they ever get to that point, because you love them. And that's what I have to say. Thank you so much, Wendie, for being on my podcast, and looking forward to spending more time with you, and especially this passing knowledge on, to people that we haven't met.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Bye for now, y'all. Have an amazing weekend.
You've been listening to Simple Questions for 100 People, part of the Xvadio Podcast Network. You can catch every episode of Simple Questions, plus the rest of the network, at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.